fuzzy. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker of the day. So as I'm sure you've seen in the media this week, the province announced their updated climate change plan, their second action plan. And so today we have with us the NB Secretariat of Climate Change, Mr. Jeff Hoyt, will present the updates and the new plan. So please welcome Mr. Hoyt.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Merci et bienvenue tout le monde. Je vais faire mon présentation en anglais ce matin, mais s'il y a des questions, je suis disponible dans la langue de votre choix. So thank you very much. It does seem a little bit eerie in some ways to be here this morning talking to you about a new climate change action plan. I don't know whether everybody's been up and going, but there's, especially on the east coast of our province, lots of images floating in this morning about some pretty serious storm flooding and damage. So this is very topical and very important conversation right now. So as you probably know, the province did release its climate change action plan this week. It comes on the heels of a plan that was released in 2016. This plan is for the period of 2022 to 2027. And it's titled Our Pathway Towards Decarbonization and Resilience. And it sort of outlines the actions that the province needs to take to identify and to respond to our climate priorities. So a little bit of context first in terms of what the plan is intending to achieve. So it really builds on the strong progress to date. It's helping to ensure that New Brunswick is positioned to take advantage of new opportunities presented by decarbonization. It also recognizes that some of our existing sectors are not going to transition overnight. So it's about providing the necessary support for the transition of those sectors as we manage that over time. It will continue to put us on a pathway to achieve our 2030 greenhouse gas emissions reductions target. And it sets out a new goal of being net zero by 2050 within the province. And it continues to focus on building climate resilience within our communities. So that's the aspect of preparing for climate change and taking necessary actions to prepare, as well as focusing on infrastructure, natural resources. And it recognizes that climate action is, in fact, a shared responsibility. This plan is built largely around government action, but it recognizes that that is not going to happen without the input of all New Brunswickers. So in terms of the engagement process, and Pierre alluded to this earlier, there was a fairly robust engagement process that supported the plan development. There was a standing committee on climate change and environmental stewardship that during the months of February and into March heard from a series of climate experts, key stakeholders, and Indigenous organizations. And that information and feedback fed into a what was heard document that was prepared by the committee that then informed us as government took that away and developed the final plan. I would note that the Cities Association as well as the other municipal associations were present and presented their perspectives to the standing committee. There was also a public engagement process that ran through an online web portal. We had over 200 submissions from across the province in terms of people's ideas about what a renewed plan should do and what the plan content should be. And I guess I wouldn't say most importantly, but a big one for us was that we had a substantial amount of cross-departmental engagement within government. And I think that, as government folks yourselves, you'll understand that I'm standing up here as a climate change secretariat. Our role within this is to coordinate. And we develop the plans and we coordinate, but we don't deliver everything. And so we can develop a great plan, but if I don't have the buy-in of all of the departments across government in terms of implementation, then that's where we're going to struggle. So all of the actions that are included within the plan have been fully vetted, endorsed through the other government departments, and it's going to make the implementation end of things a lot more streamlined and straightforward. So in terms of the structure of the plan, there's three key pillars. The first one focuses on government leadership and accountability. The second one focuses on reducing our greenhouse gases, and the third focuses on preparing for climate change, and that's the climate change adaptation end of things. Each pillar contains the actions that government believes are necessary to be able to move the needle on our climate priorities. I would note that the plan includes 30 new incremental actions. If you were familiar with the previous plan had 118 in it. If anybody's tried to manage a plan with 118 actions in it, it's a bit unwieldy. It's very difficult to focus on priorities and to actually, sort of truly get the momentum towards the things that are important. So we've really focused on the 30 things that are critical and key. Now, in saying that, that doesn't mean that those are the only things that are happening around climate change. So the plan does outline a series of things that are going to continue that I would say have become part of regular business and things that will be ongoing, but they're not going to be things that get reported on through an annual reporting process. And I would say that the content aligns with what we heard through the engagement process, both through the standing committee as well as through the public engagement. And in terms of an overall flavor of an action plan, provinces are different in their takes because we have slightly different priorities, but this is largely consistent with what you would see in terms of other provinces within the country that are taking action on climate. So let's talk about the first pillar called government leadership and accountability. Well, not surprising, a big part of this is about accountability and reporting. So it's about committing to having annual progress reports on action and implementation, and that will happen through which is required through our Climate Change Act. There's a focus on education and capacity building. In this particular case, one of the actions focuses specifically on the school system and making sure that we have education for climate education for our educators in the K-12 system. There's an ongoing commitment to collaboration with Indigenous communities. There's a commitment to keeping a price on carbon that is a requirement of the federal government for the province, and that we'll continue to do so in a manner that's fair for New Brunswick. And then also there's a commitment to continue to provide funding for climate change through the Climate Change Fund. So the next pillar is reducing greenhouse gases, and this is the largest pillar of the plan, has the most actions in it. I think probably the highlight within here is the province's commitment to achieve net zero emissions, greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And this aligns with what we're seeing with other provinces, PEI, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Quebec. The federal government has made a commitment this way. There's a number of cities within the room that have also made commitments towards net zero. So this is the province aligning itself that way and signaling that this is our intention in the future. We have an updated target for electric vehicles. In the previous plan, we had numbers of vehicles as a target, and now we're looking at percentages of sales. The target is around 6% by 2025 and 50% by 2030. Right now, we're sitting around just around 2% of sales in the province of electric vehicles. So it's a fairly good target for 2025, and the 50% target aligns us with where we're heading and seeing the market in heading nationally and internationally. There's a focus on zero emissions freight. One of the big items within here is the commitment to developing a clean electricity strategy. And there's a federal requirement to have net zero electricity generation by 2035. And this is putting the province on the pathway to say, how is it that we're going to achieve that? I know you heard from Lori Clark at NB Power yesterday, and we work closely with NB Power in terms of aligning there. There's a focus on renewable fuels, looking at clean hydrogen as well as renewable natural gas. There's a commitment to look at phasing out of heating oil by 2030. I've probably heard announcements last week with respect to federal government funding to that respect. This is a bold commitment, and it's only going to be possible if we do receive the adequate funding from the federal government to support this. There's a commitment to adopt the latest building codes, but also to make sure that there's training that's available for building officials to make sure that we're ready to implement. There's a commitment around a landfill gas capture standard. So recognizing that methane from our landfills is a big contributor towards greenhouse gases. We have caps on our landfills now, but they can be more efficient. And so this is about making sure that those landfills are capturing as much of that methane as possible, either turning it into renewable natural gas or using it for electricity generation. And I highlighted in bold here, and I'll come back to this at the end, that there's a commitment around greenhouse gas management plans for communities. So this is just these aren't all of the actions that fall under this pillar, but it's just a highlight of some of the key ones. Next, we'll sort of focus on the preparing for climate change pillar. So in terms of highlights within here, there's a commitment to have improving our understanding and awareness with respect to climate risks. A number of pieces there, a flood education study. And we're also committing to complete a provincial climate change risk assessment. And we've done a lot of work at the community level with various sectors, but we haven't had that holistic approach of a province-wide climate change risk assessment, which will really help to focus priorities and also to focus funding. And so that's a commitment. And then following on the heels of that will be a provincial climate change adaptation plan, as well as adaptation plan requirements for each of the government departments within the provincial government. I've highlighted here again the focus around adaptation plans for local government, and I've got a slide here at the end that will come back to and speak more to that. Increased resiliency of the public road network. A big focus on nature-based solutions. This is recognizing that as we think about our climate change adaptation approaches, that oftentimes looking at nature-based solutions, be it wetlands, be it naturalized stormwater management, is often a more effective and cheaper option than some of our hard infrastructure approaches. So it's where those are possible, trying to have an increased focus on that, and a commitment towards a living shorelines program, which is a way to manage our coastal areas, our inland water areas, to prevent erosion and also to help us with respect to flooding. So I'm going to come back to actions 19 and 25, and these are two in the plan that really have, a strong linkage into the municipal world. And so what this talks about is collaborating with regional service commissions, local governments, and rural districts to ensure that beginning by April 1st of 2024, that progress on greenhouse gas reduction and adaptation plan development and implementation is reported annually. And so so a lot of this action is going to speak to the fact that there is going to need to be and continue to be ongoing collaboration with municipal entities in order to be able to help support implementation, help support plan development, and help to support tracking. We do have, and I should say that our Secretariat has a fairly robust engagement approach now, and is often engaged with a lot of your staff members when it comes to both the greenhouse gas side of things and the adaptation side of things. The second commitment here is to have greenhouse gas reduction and adaptation plans are updated and completed for 50% of local governments and rural districts by 2025 and 100% by 2030. Would say that on the adaptation side, that 100% of our cities, all eight of the cities in the province, have completed adaptation plans. Obviously, those are living documents, so as information changes, they will need to be updated. But kudos to all of you for taking that leadership approach. And beginning on April 1st of 2025, the commitment is to have a way to actually track and report on implementation. So what you'll see as a theme within the plan in general is that a lot of our previous work has been focused on the planning side of things. And what we're trying to do is to shift the focus on implementation. So rather than just having plans developed, how is it that we're actually moving forward with the implementation of those, and how are we tracking that implementation over time? So with that, I'll just close in saying that, the big thing within the plan that we're trying to do is to really look beyond where we are now and truly setting the course for the future and where it is that we want to move as a province in terms of identifying our climate change priorities. You can access we have a newly updated and developed website for climate change in the province. You can access the new plan off of this link here, gnb.ca/climate change. And on there as well is a new campaign where we're talking about Reduce, Prepare, Champion that really focuses on a lot of the actions that individuals can take to both reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, prepare for climate change, and become a climate champion within your community. So I'd encourage you, if you have a chance to have a look at that website. There's a lot of good resources on there. So with that, thank you very much. Appreciate the time here this morning. I'm not sure, Pierre, whether there's an intent for questions. I'm happy to take questions. I'm also happy to stick around through coffee and answer questions if people have them.
For a few questions. We do have time for a few questions, so maybe I'll kick it off. Sure. And just ask what funding programs or streams are available to municipalities to access funds to achieve some of our climate adaptation plans. And then also similarly for citizens to access if they want to take action themselves, and that we could help communicate. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a great question. One I anticipated. So there are a lot of funding pots out there. And I think that one of the things that often happens is that because there are so many, it gets confusing as to where to access. So I'll start with, a lot of you have reached into or have accessed integrated bilateral funding, where there's funding for under the National Disaster Mitigation Program for adaptation related elements. I know that we have some work going on with stormwater systems. We have some work going on with in St. John with respect to the seawall, Moncton, the blue-green algae piece. And in that particular piece, that's a third funding. The provincial portion of that funding and for some of those projects has come through the Climate Change Fund, and recognizing that those are key climate change priorities for municipalities. With respect to the Climate Change Fund, I know I did mention it earlier, and it's a pot of money that's coming through carbon tax revenue. Right now, there was 47 million in projects that were announced in 22-23. And it will be an annual decision on a go-forward basis in terms of what government wants to allocate towards that. There isn't a direct line of application for municipalities to access that fund from outside right now. It is focused on government spending, government infrastructure, both on the adaptation side and on the greenhouse gas emission side. A lot of it is benefiting communities and benefiting citizens. The intention is to sort of examine that in the future for whether or not we have an opportunity to sort of open that up more broadly for application from outside. But I would say that that a lot of those that there are a number of projects where climate funds are being used to help support provincial priorities through the IBA side of things. In terms of other funding pots, those I would say are the large ones right now from a provincial side of things. There's a number of federal funding pots, as you're likely aware, through various municipal streams, and the federal government is very active in this space in terms of a lot of program announcement these days. So I don't have a list right on my fingertips, but I'm happy to share that one. I think it would probably be a good one to be able to share back through Pierre, to be able to communicate back out to the cities.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. And it makes me feel good to know that there's someone like you in charge of this in the province right now. But I'd like to build on Adam or Mayor Lordan's question. Do you feel that there is enough in that pot for what is coming our way? I was very inspired by the city of Halifax. Voted, I think, 13-3 to raise, taxes. They're putting $18 million a year into an environmental reserve fund so that they have the ability to leverage federal funds and to really, do what needs to be done. We just created and passed our community energy and emissions plan, but we know unless you have money behind it, these changes won't take place. So I guess my question to you, if you can answer it, is do you think that that there's enough in the pot to accommodate what we need?
It's a tough question, and I don't think you'd ever find anybody stand up to say that there is enough. There's always going to be more demand than there's money for. I think that what we are lucky with within New Brunswick, one of the things that I didn't point out previously was the fact that we do have access to the climate or the Environmental Trust Fund, and a lot of community-based climate work has been funded through the Environmental Trust Fund, and that's where a lot of your NGOs, a lot of your municipalities have access to that dollar. So is there enough? I think there's always the demand is always going to outstrip what we have in terms of dollars. What's important is that we are in a place where we can identify our priorities. And part of what we're, part of the conversation that we've started with Pierre, with Dan, and with the other associations is creating a bit of a round table where we can come together and truly talk about what some of those priorities are, and to look at where there may be opportunities for funding to be able to leverage priorities. And I know that a lot of that conversation happens already with my colleagues through Regional Development Corporation, and obviously your connections in with local government. Is there, I would say that there's always going to be more demand than there is dollars for, but what's important for us is to be able to be having that conversation so that we can be identifying what those priorities are.
Awesome. I'm actually going to continue to build on that. Sorry, I'm a little taller, so I'm going to bring us up to my altitude. So a lot of funding is out there. We know that. I'm a member of a group, a nonprofit, a support group for government called Climate Caucus. And one of the things I've consistently heard is that it is difficult to find the resources to get those full-time hires at the municipal level. In the city of St. John, we have a person who's dedicated to that. But even, with Samir Yamin, with his giant task of trying to go after infrastructure funding, which does tie into the climate pots of money, there's a lot of funding that we don't have the resources to chase, or are still on the table we may not have access to or plans for. So does the Secretariat plan to support municipalities in getting those full-time employees that are dedicated to their plans? Because we have the plans, we just don't necessarily have the funding or the resources, especially in smaller municipalities, to get the people to go after that money. Because from what I hear at the federal and provincial level, year over year, there's still a lot of money left on the table, that because there's not an ask from a municipality, the money doesn't go out the door. So I'm just curious if the Secretariat has those resourcing coordination role, or if there's any funding streams for that.
So the Secretariat's role would be, in your case in St. John, working closely with Samir, working with ACAP St. John, looking at building the capacity that way, and helping and assisting. Are there dollars available for hiring staff within municipalities to be able to do that? Not at this particular time within the funding that we have available to us. One of the challenges that we've had is that there have been municipalities that have accessed funding in the past through the Environmental Trust Fund, but we try, and if there's funding towards positions, it's to leverage an opportunity at the outset. It's not intended to be long-term commitment funding. That needs to move towards a base level budget or a priority item within the entity. So happy to continue to collaborate with you. There's no pots of money that I can point you to right now where we have dollars available to support staffing or capacity building at the municipal level.
Thanks for being here this morning, Jeff. A question. Yesterday, the mayors and CAOs in the room had an opportunity to have a dialogue with NB Power in terms of where they're going, where their future vision is regarding green energy. Any comments or feedback in terms of the success of your plan, how that's tied into NB Power moving forward in the future? And just would like to hear your comments and feedback on that.
So if as you look through the plan and you look specifically at that greenhouse gas pillar, energy is embedded throughout that. And anytime you see energy, there's often a linkage within NB Power. We work closely with NB Power as we were developing out the actions, both with NB Power and with NRED. The commitment towards the clean electricity strategy by 2025, which aligns us with the federal commitment for 2035. Although it's a simple action within the plan, it's a pretty monstrous piece. And also when we talk about the commitment towards net zero, and the commitment there is to develop a blueprint for how it is that we're going to achieve net zero. And NB Power will be instrumental in both of those pieces. You're not going to have a clean electricity strategy without NB Power being in front of that. So that's going to talk about where's the role for efficiency within that, where's the role for renewables, where do SMRs fit within that space? So that is going to be front and center NB Power's role, and also NB Power will have a very, very strong role within the net zero piece, because if you look at where our emissions are coming from within the province, about a third of our emissions right now are coming from electricity generation. And so we know that that's going to change over time. We know that there's a commitment to move off of fossils. So I would say NB Power is a very strong partner with the province in moving the plan forward. Thank you very much. And I will stick around if there's any questions anybody wants to catch me on. I'll stick around through coffee and happy to chat. So thanks again.